This is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast. This is VP. We are a solutions-based podcast, diving into the world of contrarian investing and alternative finance. You can find us hosted on the No Nonsense Forex YouTube channel, NoNonsenseForex.com, and podcast players everywhere. Episode 206 is brought to us by Bybit. Bitcoin was down a little bit on the year, but crypto traders, even bad ones, did really, really well, and they continue to do well. So if you are outside of the United States and places like Iran and Somalia, then you need to get on board. Not only can you trade anything you want on Bybit, you get great yield on your stablecoins. You get a great crypto debit card you can use just about anywhere and earn rewards there. And you also earn bonus rewards by clicking on my affiliate link, which you can find the blog for down below in the show notes. You click that link, you go to the blog, you read it, you make sure Bybit is for you, it will be, and then you click that sucker, get deposited, get to trading. Don't let everybody else get all the benefits. Make sure you do too, because with Bybit membership, has its rewards. It is the 10-Minute Contrarian Podcast, and welcome to the 2025 report card for me, your host, VP. I like doing this for the most part, especially when I win, but then I have to go back and listen to all of my prediction episodes, and I don't set myself up very well. Remind me when we do them in January to just say all of my predictions at the very end, so I can go back and listen to them. I don't love listening to myself talk. I already do that every single day of my life, and it just gets tiring. But it was actually a little bit of a bummer this year because I thought I did a lot better than I actually did. Now, I won't bury the lead. I went 5-4 this year. I thought I went like 7-2, maybe even 8-1. So it's a bit humbling going back and listening to my predictions, especially when you get them wrong. You're like, why? It was like so obvious. How could you have gotten this wrong? But I did listen to my methodology too. So I'll share a little bit of that with you as we go along here. Now, just remember, never ever forget this, contrarians. In contrarian investing, you can be wrong, like dead wrong, most of the time. And as we have seen in 2024 and in 2025, it doesn't matter at all, because when you get them right, you get them very, very right, and it completely wipes out any losses you might have had, and then still gives you way better results than anybody else out there in the market. So when you factor all of this together over the years, we outperform everybody. And we do it by spending less effort than they do, like way less. So it is a great day. It is a great year. It is always a great time to be a contrarian. And always take yearly predictions with a grain of salt, because our time horizon is much, much longer than 1 year. But I still put my own feet to the fire when it comes to yearly predictions because, one, I think it's entertaining. Two, it's always good to have some type of forecast for the year because we might be placing buys during that year. And I think it helps determine where we should attempt to allocate most of our buys. Because, again, you can't buy everything. You can't kiss every girl. But anyway, that's more talk for the episodes coming up in January. Let's go ahead and do what we do every time this year and give a bit of a recap over the predictions made back in January. Now, we still have two trading days left to go, but I don't think it's going to matter. So let's go ahead and call it now. Again, I went 5-4. Let us start with, I have no notes. I'm just kind of firing away here. Let's start with the S&P 500. S&P 500, I said down. Now, my base case for this was, if you remember, I said if I was in charge of the Trump campaign, I would crash the economy this year and have everybody with absolutely no foresight and no long game complain and bitch and just do what I had to do to get through it. So the next 3 years, I could get all of these people with short-timers disease back on my side and say, oh, hey, look how great everything is going. Wouldn't you like to vote for my party again? We spoke about this years ago, I think, with Joe Biden and oil prices. Like it's Americans are very, people in general. I'm not just gonna say Americans. People are very slow and simple. If gas prices down, I vote for you. Gas prices up, I don't. So my prediction was based on that, and my prediction was wrong. The S&P was absolutely up this year. So we put an X for that one, and then if you remember, every year in the Big Macro episode, I make a prediction for the S&P 500 and the United States dollar as denoted by the DXY. And I even said, I was like, I will probably split the baby here in 2025 because I'm going to say S&P down, but I'm also going to say United States dollar down. Now, if the S&P goes down, the U.S. dollar usually goes up traditionally. So I said, I'm probably going to go 1-1, and I'm fine with that. And that's exactly what I did. The United States dollar prediction for 2025 was down, and it actually did finish down. A lot down, actually. Went from 108 all the way down to, where are we at right now? I'm not on the DXY. Let's get there. 108 all the way down to 98 as it sits today. And again, how much of this is Donald Trump? We know that administration wants lower dollar prices. And when the S&P is up, again, the dollar is usually down. Apart from that, I don't have too much commentary on this. I still do think the dollar is the strongest fiat currency in the world. A lot of people who are, let's just say, bad at finance and really bad at understanding how Forex works think that whenever you say, fiat sucks, that means the United States dollar in particular sucks. That is not how anything works. So almost all of my fiat money right now is denominated in dollars. Unless I have a really compelling reason to change. And, like I said, if my charts tell me to make a move, I will. But it's just also easier for me, too, because the main bank accounts I deal with are in the United States and Panama, both USD-denominated accounts. But anyway, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We will talk more about the future, at least the near future, of the United States dollar in next week's Big Macro episode. But we need to move on here. Let's go gold and silver. These, I wish I could get extra credit for this, but that's not how it works. These are my strongest predictions of 2025, and I proclaimed that in the gold and silver episode. And I said up for both. And the rest, as you know, is history. This is a very warm and fuzzy feeling as a contrarian who sits there and watches price go absolutely nowhere for a very long time on something that should go up all the time. That really is contrarian sentiment 101. You just have to sit there and watch very nonsensical price action go by for a very long time to the point to where you start second guessing yourself and you start doubting yourself. But the lesson to be learned there is if you are correct in your analysis. And long term, we have utter conviction here that the things we primarily invest in here on the 10-Minute Contrarian podcast are inevitable, and it is only a matter of time. Well, then I would like to point you in the direction of precious metals throughout the entire 2020s. And what's great, what's going on now, as we've talked about in the past, it's not really a speculation run like it is with a lot of things, like you would see in crypto, for example. In gold, it is sovereign nations stockpiling gold for two main reasons. One, because I feel like they all know what's coming. Two, it is an attempt to no longer rely on the United States dollar going forward. Now, what does that do for the dollar? Again, we'll talk about that. But you have BRICS nations positioning and getting ahead for what might come that could be something we've talked about here for a long time, having gold become a factor in whatever currency they decide to use amongst each other, whether it just becomes the currency they use and they find a way to tokenize it so you don't have to move it back and forth as much, or it plays a partial role. And even though non-BRICS countries are also stacking it up, these people usually get the memo before we do. So that's a good sign for the overall price of gold. But also, they saw what the United States did to Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine. And whether you agree with what we did or not, actions have consequences. And what this signaled to the entire world is, oh, you mean the U.S. can just do that whenever they want? Well, that doesn't sit well with me. I don't like that. This almost puts me in a position of servitude to the United States. If I'm going to hold this much of my country's wealth in their currency, no matter how useful and dominant it is. And again, these countries aren't trading in and out. These countries are buying and holding like you are supposed to do. So that was the main story with gold going up. Silver, as I'm sure we all know, it is exactly everything we said it was on this podcast. Jesus Christ, why is this podcast free? I still don't know. But it is rare. It is extremely necessary. We cannot do without it. It is also money. So you have that really great downside protection behind it as well, which how many things can we say that about? Gold, silver, Bitcoin, Litecoin. That's about it. But you also have blatant Ponzi schemes from 2, maybe 3 of the top 3 bullion banks in the world, being the COMEX, the LBMA, and the Shanghai Exchange. We don't really know what's going on with Shanghai. We're learning more as time goes on, especially in these last couple months. But with COMEX and especially with the LBMA, they have been treating silver the same way you would treat something you can actually print more of, like fiat, and running a Ponzi scheme through it. Now, if you want to say fiat currency is a Ponzi scheme, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you, but at least you can maintain that Ponzi scheme for as long as you want simply by printing more. Silver, you can't do that. You will get caught with your pants down at some point, and that point is now. So you've had the mother of all short squeezes this past 2 months, but especially this past month. And the big question now, which I will try my best to answer in a couple weeks, is this short squeeze sustainable? Or is it like most things in the market, when something goes up a lot, it also goes down a lot? But anyway, this is a recap show. This is what happens when I don't have notes. I just kind of riff and things go all over the place. But yes, big win for gold, big win for silver. That was my strongest prediction. Feels good to know that not only was it right, it was very, very right. So let's get off of that high and go to something that I missed, and that was the price of Bitcoin. Now, honestly, I don't quite remember why I was as bullish on it as I was. I think there's obvious reasons to be bullish about Bitcoin all the time, the finite supply being the main thing. But the price was actually down this year. Not down by much, but certainly down. Yet, every possible fundamental factor for Bitcoin was extremely bullish, and there were lots of them. So does anybody have any idea what my prediction for 2026 might be for Bitcoin? Well, stay tuned. That will be the last episode, or last prediction episode of January. And we will go over Bitcoin and all of crypto then. But we continue just to have, I think, the mother of all sweet divergence going on there. So the price being down for the year was actually a bit of a shock. I am not upset at myself for getting that one wrong. All right, moving into energy, the final 4 predictions were energy predictions. I forgot I had so many in one episode like that. But let's start with natural gas. I said up, and the price was up. I think my case there was just the prices are just too damn low. And, when you hear sentiment like, oh, we just have endless supplies of natural gas and it's always going to be this way, that is an absolute signal for me to get long and put my money down. And that's what I did this year. And so far, so good on that. Over to uranium. My dumbass actually said uranium down. Can you believe that? Again, I don't quite remember why I said it, but I sure did. And I was surprised to hear myself say that. I was like, oh, damn it. I almost had that already marked as a win. But I said down. Derp. That was a loss. We went up a lot. And really, some people might have forgotten because we actually pulled back from those highs. So the feeling might not be there like it was a couple months ago, but yeah, uranium really caught a bid, as it probably should have. I still don't exactly know why I said bearish on that. So one win, one loss so far on energy. Let's go to the other loss. I also said copper was going to be down for 2025, and I guess that's not terrible because copper is one of those things that has always been very frustrating as to why people haven't figured it out yet, that it needs to go up and go up a lot. I think my case there was China, if I recall correctly, and that was the reason why I said down. But thank God, people have caught on, and I was already positioned. I want to be more positioned in copper than I already am, but I already had quite a few plays in. And all those plays are doing very, very well, and I hope yours are too. I'm happy to be wrong on that one. And then oil. I said down. Oil was down. And I actually had a more of a bullish bias leading into that episode, but then that very week, Trump comes out and says that he wants oil prices to go down. And love him or hate him, what we have seen is generally, so far, in this first year of the Trump administration, what he wants, he generally gets. So it's not advisable to blindly go against what he says. So I chose not to do that, and it turned out to be right. Should I talk about this now? No, I'm going to save my commentary for oil for the big energy episode in January. I also said that oil would be a bit more volatile and a bit better for traders. It actually was. It wasn't amazing, but that was probably the most confident prediction I had behind oil in the big energy episode of January 2025. So let's recap again. The losses were S&P 500, Bitcoin, uranium, and copper. The wins were the United States dollar, gold, silver, natural gas, and oil. But what's more important overall is how well most of you probably did this year. You know, it's been a great year, and it's okay to celebrate. It's okay to have that one glass of champagne. It's okay to pat yourselves on the back for a job well done. And if I can ask one thing, if I have helped in any way, I know the majority of you listen to this podcast on audio. I can see my numbers. The majority of you are on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Have you gone and given this podcast a 5-star review yet? After all the money it has made you? Have you gone and given me a free 5-star review? Could you please go do that? It does mean a lot. And I feel like sometimes I say it at the beginning of the show, but you're like, well, no, I want to listen to the podcast first. And then you do that, and then you forget to review. So now that we're towards the end, if you'd be so kind, could you please do that? And if your podcast player actually has a review function, I have Podcast Addict. I don't think it does. But some of my other larger platforms on here, like Overcast, Pocket Casts, things like that. If you're there and they do have a review function, please show a little bit of holiday cheer towards your boy. And then stay tuned for the 2026 predictions episodes, which go all throughout the month of January. We're going to give some much deeper analysis, so we're going to have a little bit of fun this year in hopes that I can keep this winning streak going. Remember, we can be wrong, dead wrong, most of the time, and still make a lot of money. But not only are we right more often than we're wrong. When we get it wrong, it's not even dead wrong most of the time. It's just kind of wrong. And as we've seen over the years, this is a really, really wonderful place to be. So to all of my contrarians out there, prospero año felicidad, and march into 2026 with the absolute utmost confidence. Whether we're right or wrong in the short term, it doesn't matter, because long term, which is all that matters, we are absolutely unstoppable, because we are not afraid to look crazy to your average investor, to your average plebeian, because in the end, we know we're not crazy. We're just early.